May the God of our calling be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus told his disciples this parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out at dawn to hire laborers for his vineyard. After agreeing with them for the usual daily wage, he sent them into his vineyard. Going out about 9 o'clock, the landowner saw others standing idle in the marketplace. He said to them, "You too go into my vineyard, and I will give you what is just." So they went off. And he went out again around noon and around 3 o'clock and did likewise. Going out about 5 o'clock, the landowner found others standing around and said to them, "Why do you stand here idle all day?" They answered, "Because no one has hired us." He said to them, "You too go into my vineyard." When it was evening, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, "Summon the laborers and give them their pay, beginning with the last and ending with the first." When those who had started about 5 o'clock came, each received the usual daily wage. So when the first came, they thought they would receive more, but each of them also got the usual wage. And on receiving it, they grumbled against the landowner, saying, "These last ones worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us, who bore the day's burden and the heat." He said to one of them in reply, "My friend, I am not cheating you. Did you not agree with me for the usual daily wage? Take what is yours and go. What if I wish to give the last one the same as you? Am I not free to do as I wish with my own money? Are you envious because I am generous?" Thus, the last will be first, and the first will be last. The Gospel of the Lord. Well, apparently, since biblical times, there have been valid reasons why workers are discouraging from talking about how much they make. In this section of the Gospel, the 19th, 20th, and 21st chapter of Matthew has Jesus say 3 times something along the lines of, "The first shall be last and the last shall be first." Digging into those stories, one can only conclude that in Matthew's view, Jesus seeks to reorder the relationship between those who have and those who struggle. Let's focus, of course, on today's story, and let's start with the day laborers, a vulnerable group by definition, people who don't have or can't get a steady job. And then even inside that group, some will be chosen and others left behind. Our story leads us to believe that while some worked hard all day long in the hot sun, the others had it easy, lazing around in the shade, just waiting. But what if there's a different take? What if we just looked at it a little bit differently and acknowledged that each and every laborer actually put in a full day? Whether it was 12 hours of labor in the hot sun and 0 idle hours, or 11 hours of idleness, 1 hour of labor, or anything in between. Each worker showed up needing, hoping to earn a day's wage. They all put in a full day. Now, the landowner. Presumably, the landowner hired all the workers needed first thing in the morning, right? I mean, that's what makes sense. So clearly, the landowner cares about more than just his vineyard and actually cares about the workers. We know this because he goes out to them several times throughout the day, 9 o'clock, noon, 3 o'clock, even 5 p.m., to make sure each one takes home a day's wage. In my mind, this action reflects more than just generosity. It reflects a new, different social order, a Christian social order that recognizes and favors the common good over the transactional order that favors entitlement and quid pro quo. It reflects a preferential option for the last, the poorest. This is echoed in the words of Pope Francis. This common good, quote, becomes logically and inevitably a summons to solidarity and a preferential option for the poorest of our brothers and sisters. Put more bluntly, God's idea of justice is everybody being able to eat at the end of the day. No matter one's capacity, no matter if you're chosen first or last. Not their fault they were idle all day. No one else hired them. Not their fault to be overlooked because their skin is dark. Not their fault that COVID rendered them unemployed and unable to pay rent or the power bill in March, and again in April, and again in May, and again throughout the summer, and again in September. Not their fault that generational systemic racism puts them too far behind the curve of advancement that no amount of drive and hard work can overcome. Not their fault. Yet, still, they show up and are willing, anxious to put in a full day's labor because no matter how hot the sun or how long the hours or how unjust the system, nothing, absolutely nothing is worse than standing idle, waiting, wondering, worrying. Will I be able to feed my family tonight? Okay, let's look at this whole story from yet a different angle. In addition to the different social order that I just described, I'd like to suggest that this story also attempts to express a basic truth about our relationship with God and how God calls each one of us. God is like the landowner who seeks workers in the vineyard. We are like the day laborers. In the social order of things, as mentioned, day laborers are a vulnerable group without permanent standing with a single employer, but rather dependent every day on a call. So if this reflects our relationship with God, it means we have no claim on God. God owes us nothing. Yet each day, God calls us to work in the world. You know, the agreement is pretty simple and basic. If we work for God day by day, God sustains us day by day. Provides, for me at least, a new appreciation for a phrase we all know by heart. Give us this day our daily bread. No more, no less. So keeping with this thread of call, Yet another angle on the story would be to imagine the workday as the span of your entire life. Again, God is the landowner, we are the day laborers. We all arrive early in the market square, 6 a.m., early in our lives, eager and ready to respond to God's call. For some, that call comes through loud and clear, and off they go. For the rest of us, well, we wait, and we're rendered idle, and we wonder, and we wait. Did I miss the call? Should I have listened harder? Will God come back? Indeed. God comes back at mid-morning, midday, mid-afternoon, and even near the very end of the workday. At key stages in our lives, at any point in our lives. God says, I have an idea for you. Are you ready? Are you willing? Shameless commercial, sorry. With all of this in mind, I just want to encourage each of you to consider participating in our Adult Faith Formation series that starts October 1. We've named it Called to Change, our theme for the year, Finding Life's Purpose. It fits right into what I'm talking about here. No matter what time of day it is in your life, in this series, we seek to help you hear and respond to God's call. You'll find the details on the Sunday page, or a link to the details. So let me simply conclude by saying, pay attention. God is calling each of us to align the things that we do in the world with the things that God is doing in the world.